another episode of Flip and Customize. If you haven't done so, hit that subscribe. Help us get there. We're trying for 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. We just hit the 200 mark the other day, and that's a big milestone, so awesome. Anyway, what we have in the shop today is not the normal thing with wheels we're working on, but it's a 2000 Honda Forman 400, and it is beat. And I knew that when I picked it up last night. I just bought this as a flip for the shop. I got it as what I thought was the price is right. The front wheel bearings and everything are completely shot in it. The guy who, I feel like it was an honest guy, I just got it, I put a battery in it, I don't know what I'm doing, I have no mechanical ability whatsoever, and it doesn't start. Cool, so it does crank over. I checked some of the vitals, and then I went and checked the compression because it wasn't starting, and it ain't got no compression. So, do I think the guy was honest with me? I hope so, because more often than not, I don't get burned, or I wouldn't be in business doing what I do. So, let me show you what I found and what led us up to where we're about to get into. I wasn't going to make this video, but this is where we're at. I'm making a video now because it's some interesting stuff I want to talk about. Alright, so this is actually a push rod motor on these here. And what's nice about these is you're not really dealing with the timing chain or any of that. So that makes the rebuild a little bit easier. And when I've already popped the fuel tank off, which is a plastic tank, but it's full of rust. And if you see the air filter, that's gone too. And I can only imagine what it looks like inside the carburetor. But anyway, one of the first things you want to check with low compression is, when I say low, it doesn't even register. Verify your compression gauge is working. And by that, I mean I have two compression gauges. I've tried them both. Take an engine, this is just my cordwood saw that I use down at the barn. Take an engine that's a known running engine and check your compression with the gauge before you condemn something and tear into an engine for nothing. That's tip one, huge. Another thing to do is throw some oil in the cylinder and see if the compression comes back up. That usually is a sign that kind of will help you out a little bit troubleshooting. You got a piston ring issue, or do you have a valve issue? So I did that. It didn't change anything. Another thing to look for on these is broken springs. Now, at a quick glance, the springs are not broken. That's a good thing, kind of. I would rather just be a broken spring. It'd be much easier. However, when we pull this assembly off of here, I'll be able to get a better look at the springs. I did check the clearance as well, and it should be around 4 or 5 thousandths of an inch, and it's pushing 20. It's got excessive clearance on the valves. Shouldn't affect anything to that degree of not registering compression whatsoever. But this thing's had a hard life. Another thing to look for too is on your tailpipe, right up front here, is you look for oil drooling out of the tailpipe, and there's actually not. So whenever the last thing this thing ran was, I'm gonna say it wasn't so much a piston ring issue, we got a valve issue. And when I say valve issue, it could be many things. So with that being said, I wanna talk a little bit about valves. It could be multiple things that happen. We might have the broken valve spring. We could have an actual seat that has been pounded or has fallen out, and that's just a little metal ring that is pressed into the cylinder head and is pounded out, and it's just beat up. It could be the valve stem itself, might be a little bent. We could have excessive wear on the stem. We could have a head gasket issue. There's a lot of little things that could be contributing to the fact that, hey, you know what? This thing's worn out. But when we get the head off, it'll tell us a little more because we'll get a better look at the head itself. And then again, we'll have to go to the point of probably, unless something's a smoking gun on the head, we'll probably pull the cylinder off too, so we can get a look at the rings and see what's going on there. So what we'll do is we're just gonna start by pulling this assembly here off, kind of like your rocker cap assembly. We're gonna pull this off here and get a better look at our springs and see what's going on. So we pulled off the rocker assemblies, and here's the push rods here. There's no obvious damage on this thing. We got a better look at the springs, again, without taking them off, but everything's tight and there's no obvious damage. So we gotta go a little deeper. So I've already taken the exhaust off. I've already pulled the carburetor off. There's an engine mount here you gotta take off. There's two 10mm bolts. Don't forget those 10mm head bolts. And you get 3 studs here, and then what you took off of your caps, and then the head itself will pop off this engine. And you gotta take the intake boot off too, so you can free the head and get that off, and at least then we'll get a better look at this head. But otherwise, it should pop right out of here. I'm not super familiar with these engines, but pretty straightforward. So let me pop this head out of here. Well, there's the head, and there's no smoking gun. There's no sign of damage, and actually the color of the valves, it's not horrible, and I dumped oil down the cylinder. The head gasket there's no smoking guns on this thing yet, folks. We're gonna go ahead and pop the valves out of there so we can get a look at the seats, because regardless, we'd be lapping the seats no matter what on this thing. This is not gonna get a full machine shop rebuild regardless, as long as the crank is good. The cylinder's good, because that's the step we're going to next. We're gonna go ahead and pop this cylinder right off of here. There's a couple more bolts down in there. 1, can't stop focusing, 2, right down there. So we'll take those 2 out so we can go ahead and look at the cylinder, make sure there's no damage. And at the end of the day, this thing just might have been worn out and needs to freshen up. So we'll see. Well, you know what I said, how there was 2 more bolts down there? Well, I was wrong, because down that hole, there's an actual Phillips head that when you'd first put the cylinder on, it would help you line the cylinder up. So do yourself a favor, don't strip that out. Get your Phillips head set in there, smack it with a hammer, use your wrench on the shaft if you have to. I was able to smack it and it came loose real easy. So let me just finish popping this off. All right, now that that screw is out of there, we're gonna go ahead and pop this cylinder off. And don't forget to grab that screw afterwards. Ooh, I'm not liking what I see so far, guys. Oh boy. Well, I guess. Well, I guess the joke's on me, guys. Holy damn. Whoever had this four-wheeler clearly knew they had a catastrophic failure. And I ended up with the short end of the stick on this one, guys. That's not good. And of course, the cylinder is gone as well. So this might be to the point where this thing is just not worth fixing. So scope of work growth. Because at this point, guys, we got to pull this engine and split the cases and pick those pieces out of there. Because the chances of finding them all right here and getting them out of there is probably slim to none. So that sucks. But this is a great video for you guys. Well, definitely not a quitter. But we're so busy in the shop doing bigger projects, I ain't got time to fix this. And to be honest with you, we definitely got the short end of the stick on this one. Because whoever sold this to me knew this thing had a catastrophic failure. It didn't stop running from sitting like I was told. Took the guy's word for it. Lesson learned there. Be really thorough. But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't lose often. We lost on this one. I'm gonna try to sell. I'm just gonna sell it as parts because it's a 2000 machine. It's got a lot of good parts on it. The whole low end's good. The head's good. It just needs to be taken apart and the pieces cleaned out. New piston, and bore out the cylinder, and someone can get a good four-wheeler on their hands. But in the meantime, we're gonna clean this up. We're gonna ship it out the door as parts. I hate to do it, but we got some cool builds happening here, and that's what we need to focus on. So anyway, if you liked checking out the catastrophic failed four-wheeler, then please subscribe for more good content. Thanks, guys. Flip and Customized.